Hello everyone and welcome to our presentation on Lost in Translation. My name is Sarah and today I'll be joined by Cormac, Donna and Jess as we cover Sofia Coppola's take on the romantic comedy drama. Lost in Translation, made in 2003, follows the story of Charlotte and Bob, played by Scarlett Johansson and Bill Murray respectively, as they search for a connection amidst their own personal struggles. To begin, we'll take a look at the film's production. Sofia Coppola was inspired to write the film after spending a lot of time in the Park Hyatt, Tokyo, deciding that she wanted to make a movie set there. Coppola also drew on her own experience of loss and isolation that she felt in her 20s, as well as her strained marriage. She also cited 1946 film The Big Sleep as a major influence. Coppola began writing the script in 1999 with the help of her brother Roman Coppola. Coppola wrote the film for Bill Murray, maintaining that the film would not have been made if Murray did not accept the role. She relentlessly pursued him for months, and when Murray finally accepted, he told the New York Times, "She spent a lot of time getting me to be the guy. I felt I couldn't let her down." For Murray's co-star, Coppola liked Johansson, based on her performance in the 1996 film Manny and Lowe, recalling her as this cute little girl with that husky voice. Johansson was offered the role without an audition. Filming began in late September of 2002 and went for 27 days. Coppola aimed to use a small crew and as little equipment as possible, hoping to adhere to a tight budget. Most of the scenes filmed in the hotel room were done in the early morning as to not disturb hotel guests, and the outdoor scenes relied on the city bystanders as extras. After much discussion with the director of photography Lance Acord, it was decided that the scenes would be shot with film rather than video, as Coppola felt it added to the dreaminess of the mood. Due to the film's small script, Coppola encouraged improvisation, including the film's final sequence, where it's rather difficult to discern what Murray whispers into Johansson's ear. Although Coppola had originally scripted it, she didn't like it and allowed Murray to whisper something indecipherable, claiming that she liked it better that it stayed between the two of them. The soundtrack largely employed songs from the shoegaze and dream pop genres, including Scottish alternative rock band Jesus and Mary Chain and French pop duo Air. 4 original songs were written for the film by My Bloody Valentine's frontman Kevin Shields. Coppola also wanted to use the music to aid in communication of melancholic and moody atmosphere. Coppola did not sell the distribution rights to the US and Canada until she completed editing the film, selling it to Focus for $4 million. The clip we are about to show you is the final scene in the film, and the moment at which Charlotte and Bob develop their platonic relationship into a romantic one.
Hey, hold on here. Let me out. Thank you. Hey, you.
This scene has become rather famous due to the fact it is impossible to discern what Bob whispers into Charlotte's ear. Sofia Coppola initially considered inserting a dubbed recording. However, she felt that she preferred the secrecy and intimacy of the moment.
Lost in Translation features a small cast to tell its small-scale, more intimate story. The two main characters in the film are Bob Harris and Charlotte, who are played by Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson respectively. Supporting roles include Giovanni Ribisi as John, Charlotte's husband and a celebrity photographer, Anna Faris as Kelly, a Hollywood actress, Fumihiro Hayashi as Charlie, Charlotte's friend, and Catherine Lambert as the lounge singer. Prior to Lost in Translation, Bill Murray was more known for deadpan and sarcastic comedy roles such as Peter Venkman in Ghostbusters and Phil in Groundhog Day. Since this film speaks to two souls making a deep connection with each other in a foreign country, enjoying those experiences during the short time that they have together, audiences thus see a more different side of the characters. Murray's performance as Bob was widely praised for his handling of a more serious role that combined with the more comic persona for which he was already broadly known. Lost in Translation is distributed by Focus Features and Toho Koshinsha Film. At the early stage of production, Coppola and her agent decided to sell the foreign distribution rights of the movie to a number of companies to fund the project. Part of the reason they couldn't find investors was because the script was too short, and Murray lacks formal participation. The first deal that went through was with Japan's Toho Koshinsha Film, and then later on with distributors in France and Italy. Focus Features came in last to grab the remaining foreign distribution right. Since Coppola wanted to maintain the final cut privilege and feared that a distribution deal with a North American studio would threaten her influence, she sold her distribution rights of United States and Canada to Focus Features after 10 weeks of editing. Coppola initially offered the domestic distribution right for $5 million, but she decided to sell them to Focus for $4 million, citing her appreciation for the international deals the company had secured for the film. Focus promoted the film by employing a conventional indie-style marketing campaign. To favor a wider audience appeal, posters and trailers emphasizing the recognizable star presence of Murray and his performance in the film's comic sequence. The strategy involved generating positive word of mouth for the film well before its September 2003 release and brought excellent publicity effects to the movie.
Lost in Translation can be described as a romantic dramedy, blending elements of traditional romantic comedy with more introspective and character-driven drama film. Sofia Coppola's directorial style often focuses on atmosphere and strong characterization, which is exemplified in the on-screen interaction between main characters Bob and Charlotte. Also an editing consultant for the film, Coppola is well aware of viewer expectations and behaviours and how these shape the way audiences view films. Coppola plays these tendencies from the opening shot of the film, with the 40-second long close-up shot on Charlotte's behind subtly providing two meta-commentaries on the film itself. Firstly, the shot situates the film firmly within Coppola's niche as a high-profile auteur filmmaker. Jeff King notes that the shot contains both subtle and obvious appeal in its combination of aesthetic and erotic qualities, signifying the film's position between mainstream and independent film. The shot also raises questions about the male gaze, with Todd Kennedy writing, "The shot lasts so long as to become awkward, forcing the audience to become aware of, and potentially even question, their participation in the gaze." Coppola's aforementioned reputation as an auteur filmmaker also likely speaks to the film's indifference towards rom-com convention, as the film simply concludes with a silent exchange before the two leads part ways, rather than riding out into the sunset. Cinematographer Lance Accord provides the film with an understated presentation via the use of available light photography for the film. Using real light sources as often as possible as opposed to carefully manufacturing exposure allows the film to bask in the Tokyo nightlight and gives the film an overall soft, pastel colour palette. This style of cinematography can broadly be extended to the film's overall presentation as well, be it the use of mise-en-scene or soundtrack, as it is often low-key, stylized just enough to adequately provide the film with an appropriate atmosphere, without the film form distracting from Coppola's focus, the film content, Bob and Charlotte.
Lost in Translation primarily explores themes of isolation, as well as a loss of and search for identity through its loose narrative. Coppola describes the film as being about things being disconnected and looking for moments of connection. Americans Bob and Charlotte find themselves overwhelmed and culture shocked, both on their own personal quest to find fulfillment. Coppola's film attempts to create the perfect storm to promote existential realization in both main characters. Although Bob and Charlotte are both experiencing a crisis of identity, their experiences are very different. Charlotte, a young philosophy graduate who believes she must achieve her highest potential, and Bob, an aging movie star, is dealing with the effects of constantly being represented by extraneous sources, such as advertisements in cinema, all of which are out of his control. In a close reading of the film, Michelle Darnell is quoted as saying, "Lost in Translation projects a study of the ambiguity and complexity of the human situation, in part by exaggerating how frequently humans attempt to ignore or lie to themselves about their situation, and how such attempts are futile." Bob and Charlotte's internal crises are amplified by the culture shock they both experience being in Tokyo. This makes tourism a central theme of the film, as well as Japanese culture. Lost in Translation and Coppola have been heavily criticized for the lazy and sometimes offensive portrayal of Japanese culture. However, the film does attempt to highlight the problems with American culture by juxtaposing it with Japan. In her book, Sofia Coppola, The Politics of Visual Pleasure, Anna Bachman-Rogers says, "Lost in Translation is highly critical of a specifically American form of culture that is grounded in a near obsessional focus on the notion of self. This point is highlighted through Anna Faris's character Kelly, a blonde American actress who is blind to life outside of herself, set against the backdrop of Japan, a culture that values the many." Coppola uses the themes addressed throughout the film in an attempt to critique American idealism in favor of the Japanese communal and interpersonal spirit. The good of the community is held at a higher value than the status and wealth of a single person. Coppola shows the spiritual and personal growth of Charlotte and Bob as they form their own personal connection to Japanese culture, a new idea of what it means to be part of a collective, and a fresh sense of self.
Lost in Translation is met with acclaim from critics and audiences alike, winning over 60 international awards, including the Best Original Screenplay Award at the 76th Academy Awards. The film also received 3 nominations at the Oscars, including for Best Picture, Best Actor for Bill Murray, and Best Director for Coppola herself. While Scarlett Johansson's performance as Charlotte was also met with an overwhelmingly positive reception, Murray's performance in particular impressed viewers as the film proved his acting credentials beyond the dry and sarcastic typecast roles he had become known for. The film maintains a 7.7 rating on IMDb, a Metascore of 89, and a certified fresh rating of 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, with solid audience scores being bolstered by rave critic reviews. Made on a budget of just $4 million American dollars, the film made just under $1 million on its opening weekend of a semi-limited release, quickly earning back its budget as the release expanded. After having been screened for 3 months, the theatrical release expanded again as the film's heavy presence at the 76th Academy Awards renewed interest in the feature. The film would go on to make $45 million domestically and $74 million internationally, totaling $119 million in box office sales. The film has drawn criticism over its depictions of Japanese culture and its people more broadly, however. Writing in the Guardian newspaper, Kikude slammed the film's supposed soft bigotry, writing, "There is no scene where the Japanese are afforded a shred of dignity. The viewer is sledgehammered into laughing at these small yellow people and their funny ways, desperately aping the Western lifestyle without knowledge of its real meaning," before concluding that the film's caricatures play to long-standing American prejudice about Japan. Key scenes and depictions that are known to draw criticism include the escort scene, the karaoke scene, and the height joke visual gags surrounding the 6'2" Murray in the elevator and shower.
According to Jonathan Gray in his book Show Sold Separately, Promo, Spoilers and Other Media Paratexts, paratexts tell us what to expect and prepare us for other texts. It is this way paratexts shape the way we consume films and our expectation of them. It is with this in mind that I will discuss the paratext for Lost in Translation. For the film's poster, Bill Murray's star power is capitalized upon. The image sees Murray sitting dejectedly in a nondescript and standard hotel room, dressed in the uniform hotel robe and slippers. In the background appears the skyline of Tokyo. The text above Murray reads, "Everyone wants to be found." It provides little information about the film and doesn't suggest to the audience that it is a romance or a comedy as the film is often defined. The trailer follows a similar path in choosing to reveal little about the film, focusing once again on the stardom of Bill Murray and his excellent portrayal of the main character Bob. One of the key scenes featured in the trailer is the whiskey advert scene, in which Bob tries and fails to understand the demands of the eccentric Japanese photographer. The scene shows Murray at his best and highlights the comedic nature of the film, which the producers believe to have strong marketability. The scene is also successful in communicating the loss and dislocation felt by the characters in the film, which is further reiterated by the texts, "Bob is lost, Charlotte is lost too." The trailer tries to communicate to the audience that the film is more than just a standard formulaic romantic comedy, but rather a journey of friendship and connection. The film was very well received by reviewers and described as a mood piece by Variety magazine writer David Rooney. He went on to applaud the film's use of humour and poignancy that make it a pleasurable and melancholy experience. Johansson was also praised for her performance, with reviewers claiming that Murray had met his match in his co-star. The directors and stars of the film helped to shape the way the film is consumed, and Lost in Translation is Sofia Coppola's second film, following her 1999 success The Virgin Suicides. The two films share similar themes of lost desire and a search for connection. The film was also the point at which critics stopped pointing to her father for the reason for her success, as stated in Interview magazine. Scarlett Johansson was a relatively new face in Hollywood, being only 18 at the time. Johansson had played children and teenagers, including a role in 1998 film Horse Whisperer. Lost in Translation was one of her first adult roles. Murray, however, had had a varying and successful career, including scoring an Oscar nomination for 1999 film Rushmore. It was for this reason Murray was used as a promotional tool for the film, as his was a face viewers felt they could trust.
It has been 17 years since the original release of Lost in Translation, and the film continues to be a hallmark of indie cinema. One of the most iconic scenes in the film is the elusive ending. The final scene shows Bob whispering to Charlotte in a busy Tokyo street before they part ways. Coppola is quoted in an interview as saying, "That thing Bill whispers to Scarlett was never intended to be anything. I was going to figure out later what to say and add it in, and then we never did. It was between them." This is considered a film trope, sometimes called the silent whisper, and is one of the few times audiences are unable to hear dialogue in order to add an element of mystery or intrigue. Although Coppola was definitely not the first director to make this creative choice, Lost in Translation is arguably one of the most famous instances of the silent whisper. It inspired many iconic pop culture moments, such as Pam's goodbye to Michael in Steve Carell's final episode of The Office. Pam says a soundless goodbye to Michael, as it is not picked up by the show within a show recording equipment. The audience never finds out what they say to each other. Michael and Pam share an emotional hug reminiscent of the one between Bob and Charlotte. The moment was even parodied on cult classic sitcom Community, when Troy and Abed share a silent whisper when saying an emotional goodbye. It is then revealed that Troy said, "I know you hate when people do this in movies." Scarlett Johansson herself made reference to the scene during another one of her iconic films, The Avengers. Her character, Black Widow, whispers something inaudible in Hawkeye's ear at the end of the film, a clear reference to the iconic scene in Johansson's career. Lost in Translation director Sofia Coppola's latest 2020 film, titled On the Rocks, also stars Bill Murray. Although the film is not a sequel to Lost in Translation, many fans believe it's a continuation of the tone and themes explored in Coppola's 2003 film. This has brought Lost in Translation back into the public eye for the first time in many years.
And to wrap up, our group would like to pose the following questions to you all.
There are no subtitles added for Japanese to the shooting whiskey commercial scenes. Do you think it helps to highlight Bill Murray's sense of hopelessness and loneliness in a strange country?
Would knowing what Murray whispers into Johansson's ear alter your perception of the film dramatically?
And lastly, do you believe that the depiction of Japanese culture and people in the movie is merely a means of emphasising how Bob and Charlotte are lost in translation, or is the portrayal insensitive and culturally ignorant? And if those questions conclude our presentation on Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation. Thank you all for watching, and we hope you enjoyed the film and our presentation.